All right, today we're jumping into a pretty fascinating concept that's been making the rounds online. This idea of trigger tests that women supposedly use in dating. Now, the source we're looking at says these aren't mean-spirited or anything. Instead, they're a way to check a guy's internal strength. So what does that even mean? Let's break it down.
And this quote from the source material, man, it really gets to the core of it all. It is not about the guy. It is about watching how fast you fall from your own throne. See, the whole point here isn't about what someone else does or says to you. It's all about your own self-possession. It's about how easily you can get knocked off your game or, fall from your own throne.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we've got to define this core idea the source calls frame. Then we'll dive into 3 types of these so-called tests, the verbal ones, the behavioral ones, and the social ones. And finally, we'll pull it all together and look at the big idea, the principle behind the whole thing. So, what on earth is frame? Well, according to the source, this is the absolute foundation of the whole philosophy. Think of it as your internal reality, your core confidence, your sense of self. So, losing your frame is what happens when you let something someone says or does totally dictate how you feel. You get all reactive and defensive instead of just staying centered.
All right, first up, verbal jabs and challenges. According to this way of thinking, these are specific things people might say, little conversational curveballs really, designed to test your composure and see if your frame can be rattled with just words.
And here's a classic example from the video, one you've probably heard before. You are just like every other guy. The video claims this is what's called a narrative framing tactic. The point isn't actually to say you're average. The real test is to see if that comment can yank you out of your confidence and make you feel like you have to prove you're special.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? You see the 2 paths. The frame loss response is to immediately get defensive, maybe start listing all the ways you're not like other guys, basically looking for their approval. But the frame hold response, you just stay cool. You don't get fazed at all. It shows that their comment has 0 power because your sense of self, that comes from you, not from them.
Okay, let's look at another one. Picture this. You're sharing something you're really passionate about, a real deep moment, and then boom, they hit you with, wow, look at you getting all emotional. The source says this kind of humor is meant to challenge your leadership in that moment to see if it can shake your conviction. And this just perfectly shows the fork in the road. Losing frame here means you kind of shrink back, you get embarrassed, maybe you even apologize for being passionate. But holding frame, according to this philosophy, that's when you just smile, you own it, and you keep going without missing a beat. It proves your conviction isn't so fragile because it doesn't depend on their approval.
Okay, so we've talked about words. Now let's shift gears and move from verbal jabs to stuff that's nonverbal. This next section is all about those subtle shifts in behavior and energy that, from the source's point of view, are meant to provoke a reaction and test how stable your frame really is.
Okay, imagine this. You're having a great conversation, the vibe is awesome, and then nothing. They just go completely quiet, blank face. The video calls this emotional bait. That silence is like a vacuum, and the test is to see if your own anxiety makes you rush in and fill it.
So the big question here is, who's in control of the vibe? The frame loss response is when you get all nervous, maybe ask, hey, is everything okay? That basically shows you need their validation to feel good. But the frame hold response, you're just cool with the silence. You maintain your own rhythm, proving your emotional state isn't up for grabs.
All right, this next one is what the source calls emotional whiplash. So you have this amazing, close moment, maybe a deep conversation or a big laugh, and then all of a sudden they seem cold and distant, and you have no idea why.
And this slide really lays out the choice you have. The source says the trap is to start chasing. Sending a bunch of texts, asking what did I do wrong, that just hands over all the control. The other option is to stay anchored in your own good vibe, trust your own reality, and show that their mood swings don't control yours.
All right, our last category of examples takes things into the social world. According to the source, these are tests that look at how you handle your confidence when other people are around. Basically, how well your frame holds up when it's under the spotlight.
So here's a really common one the video points out. You're feeling good, confident, and she just casually mentions another guy, like, oh, that reminds me of this guy I knew. From this perspective, that's a pattern disruption. It's designed to see if it'll make you feel insecure or like you're being compared to someone else.
And once again, it's all about the response.
Losing frame is any kind of visible reaction, even just a flicker of annoyance or a shift in your energy. But holding frame means you're totally unfazed. You treat the comment like just a piece of information that has absolutely no impact on your own self-worth because that's something you generate yourself.
Okay, one last social test here, and it's based on an idea the source calls compliance testing. This is all about those small requests, like asking you to hold her purse or grab something. The test isn't about if you'll do it, it's about the energy you have while you're doing it. You can see the different vibes right here. The source argues that if you rush to do it, you seem like you need approval. If you act all annoyed about it, you seem weak. But if you just do it with this relaxed confidence, that shows you're grounded. You're the source of your own calm, and a simple request isn't going to throw you off your game. Okay, so we've gone through the verbal, the behavioral, and the social stuff. But what's the big idea here? What connects all of these examples? Let's get to the core principle of why, according to this source, this whole concept of frame is supposed to matter so much.
Really, it all comes down to one simple question. Where does your validation come from? Is it internal or external? This whole philosophy is about making that shift, from needing other people's approval to generating your own sense of self-worth. The end goal is to build a core self that's so solid, so unshakable, that you become the source of your own emotional state, no matter what's going on around you.
And that brings us to this final question from the source material. Are these interactions really these crucial tests of character? Or are they just normal, sometimes awkward human interactions? Well, according to the philosophy we've just unpacked, how you answer that question, well, that is your frame.